All right, let's recap last week's football games. First, let's talk about our experiences because we were both 25 minutes away from each other watching great games. I went to the Central at Howell on a Friday night and had a great time on the sidelines with all the administrators. They had a youth football night. Incredible atmosphere. I loved it there. How was the atmosphere at Jackson?
Yeah, it was beautiful there. I mean, obviously the jungle, one of the most well-known home fields in the
Yeah.
Shore Conference. Beautiful weather, big Jackson Memorial student turnout. So they had the crazies going nuts in the stands up there for them. And I always laugh that Jackson's band is like bigger than like a Group 1 school. They must have like 200 people in their band. It's pretty amazing. So they always put on a good show too. Yeah, one of the best atmospheres in the Shore Conference. And I know the game you were at. I know Howell was a big 20-7 win, but it was almost like there was one bigger event that sort of overshadowed all of that when Chase Gunbrecht goes down early, right?
I didn't even realize he was injured. I thought they were just because it was hot and people were cramping. They were rotating players in. Then I got the report in the second half that he was done. And when the way they said it, that kind of broke my heart a little bit because we know he's a great athlete, but he's a great kid too off the field. And if he
And the
is
Shore
out,
Conference's leading rusher last year,
yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that he's the centerpiece of their offense.
Yeah, I mean the back they got in Brandon Jones is a very serviceable back. He's going to be pretty good. But when you lose the best running back in the Shore Conference for as long as it may be, I don't want to hear if it's season or not. That's a big loss for Central. Very big.
And now, what did you see from Howell in that game?
I saw Howell, and I was very, very impressed. They won the 50-50 game. Last year, they did not win those games. They won it this year in their first game, opening night. Everybody there, that was a statement, and I think they proved it to themselves by the way they were reacting after the game that this is going to be a special season, and it could. But that's going to take them to the Jackson game, which we'll talk about later on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I saw their opponent of this week, Jackson Memorial, and I think the big theme, the takeaway from that game was their offense looked much better this year than it did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they struggled to score points against quality teams. Brick Memorial, certainly a good team, good opponent, great quarterback, good athletes all over the field. But Jackson Memorial, good balance. Ty Mann, their senior quarterback, he looked great. They were rolling him out a lot, right and left. He's great making throws on the run. And they had some big plays down the field, which I think last year they didn't get those chunk plays. They weren't hitting people for 20, 30 yards in a play. They're trying to grind out drives 3 yards at a time, which against good opponents, it's tough to mount those 12-play drives, in a big game. Whereas this game, the story of the game was explosive plays. D'Alessandro, the junior receiver, he made a huge impact. Returned a punt 90 or kickoff 90 yards for a touchdown. Right, it was a punt, and then
right before the half, right before the half.
Right, that was a backbreaker. There was like 15 seconds left before halftime. You think you're just playing out the string, to get into the locker room up by a touchdown, and then you go do that, and that was a game-breaking play. And then also got behind the defense for a 41-yard touchdown pass. Or touchdown catch. So, yeah, I think they showed just a lot more big play ability because that team can always run the ball between the tackles. They always have big physical running backs, a good line.
Yeah.
But now they have that balance. And talking to Ty Mann after that game, he said another big thing was he felt like they came out and attacked. Last year, he felt like they played on their heels a little bit, whereas this game, they took it to Brick Memorial, running the ball right at them, play action on big throws, rolling out. So, yeah, if their offense can make that jump to one of the top 10 or 12 offenses in the Shore, that turns them into a real playoff and division title contender.
A big difference. D'Alessandro, Jaden Hernandez, and Sean Hubbard, who were outstanding sophomores last year, are now juniors and impact players.
Right.
So that's really helped.
D'Alessandro was basically saying last year I was kind of getting my feet wet as a sophomore. I wasn't really ready to be that big playmaker, but now I am. And, that gives their offense a whole other extra dimension. And, to me, they're just as huge as a threat as anybody in that division to win the whole thing as far as, getting that title with teams like Howell and Marlboro and a few other contenders. And, yeah, we'll get to that later about how this is an early separation game in that division coming up this weekend. And now going to Friday, you went to a huge game in Monmouth County. Long Branch goes up 13-0 on Middletown South.
Good.
at the half, and then Eagles roar back to take a 23-13 win. What were your takeaways
Well,
from that?
everybody knows they got Shamar Williams, Long Branch, and they have some Saku Kamu, but they have Ernest Reevy, a junior quarterback that is outstanding. And I love the play calling. They were keeping Middletown South off balance, running when they were should passing when they should running. They looked really good coming off the ball. But then all of a sudden, the cramping came in. I would say kind of right near the end of the first half, and it slowly started to dribble to other players, and it was a continuous guy was always out. Guys were screaming, "Come on in!" He goes, "I can't even bend my leg." It was a distraction, the cramping,
Okay.
but that says a lot about Coach Antonucci in Middletown South because they are like a machine. They just keep rolling, 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 and before you know it, I looked at it, that 23 unanswered points. 23.
And a huge game by Colin Gallagher defensively, right? The
Yeah,
linebacker.
and he's also the fullback. But Jake Zawako didn't have great stats, but he was the dude on the field the whole time. I mean, roaming the defensive backfield, a quarterback facilitating, doing all this stuff, punting, kicking, does it all. He does it all. But their line up front with Tom White and Adedizio, I mean, give it to them. Middletown South did not panic, and they just steamrolled, and their Middletown South is, same every year. They're just going to keep winning, and they are going to be a very good team, this year in the American.
I just thought that's a big one because their schedule is such an absolute gauntlet. They play one top 10 team after another, so to go out and get a win like that on the road against a quality team, that's a huge confidence boost, right off the bat.
Yeah, I think one of the storylines this week was 4 varsity coaches got their wins. Think of it in very dramatic form. You had Tom River South's Matt
And not
Martin.
only that, there was a few heart stoppers. I'd say there was a few heart stopper wins too. I mean,
Yeah.
like they didn't get that win until the last second.
Yeah, Tom River South went 99 yards and scored a touchdown with Alexander's pass in the end zone at the end of the game. You had Tommy Farrell Jr. Manchester came out with a 43-26 come from behind win. At Manchester, you had Pinelands' John Tierney with a 1914 squeaker at home against Point Beach. And then also Jeff Papkin, who scored at the end of the game with Kyle Varese, and also then sealing it with interception, beating Colts Neck. So 4 exciting wins. I'm sure they don't want to have that every single week, but wins are hard to come by in the short conference. But congratulations to them all.
Yeah, and I mean for Pinelands, first time they won at home to open the season in 12 years. So
yeah,
big step forward for them and John Tierney. And then I think with Jeff Papson and St. John Vianney, our question was, is RBC just really good and Vianney, just couldn't keep up with them in the opener, or is Vianney going to struggle? And I think they answered the bell by going on the road and beating a solid Colts Neck team in the final seconds. I think it showed, maybe it's just they just played a really hard opponent week one, but they're going to be a good team themselves.
Somebody was asking me over the weekend, when's the best time to play Red Bank Catholic? I said February. I mean, is it
7 on 7 in July?
Yeah, beginning of the year, end of the year, the middle. I mean, they're steamrolling right now. I mean, they won 63-0 against Freehold Borough. They're really rolling. I mean, they're sinking. I don't think the ball has hit the ground with Frankie Williams. I think he's 14 for 16 for the year, 7 touchdowns. I mean, he's really clicking. They really all are right now with Red Bank Catholic. So I don't know when is the best time to play them, but they're definitely rolling right now.
And I mean, there was a ton of games this past weekend, but I mean, was there any one like surprise opener?
I picked the upset. I called it. I called Mount Monmouth over Raritan, Rumson. I mean, Red Bank. You didn't think it was an upset, but I mean, Monmouth coming off a division championship. A lot of guys back. I just sort of equated home game at night, which they had those portable lights. They had a great game. Jen had a fantastic game with Wiggins in the past game, but Julian Jones is a running back that I think a lot of people who don't know about him will know about him this year. Dynamic football player, and he's got some weapons at Monmouth, and they're going to give everybody
208 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I think we knew about him, right? He was a 1,000-yard rusher last year.
Yep.
He was, maybe you're right, a little under the radar. They did win the division, but they weren't, a highly ranked top 10 team. But I think the real revelation was the pass game in that game. You know, like that they're not this one-dimensional team. Like you said, Jan and Wiggins, they really lit it up as well. You know, Wiggins was well over 100 yards receiving. So I think, you know, that is a big sign that, you know, they might be able to take that next step forward this year because of an explosive offense. And then again, we'll talk about this coming up, but, you know, they play a Raritan team that's got plenty of offense too. They might need a few light bulbs for the scoreboard this week.
Raritan had an impressive team against a scrappy Matawan, 31-23. Danny Calicari, special teams again with a 67-yard return, kick return. I mean, there's always a threat when you have a guy that can take it to the house. Of course, you know, we got Kieran Falzone, but Raritan looks like they're going to be a very, very tough team this year too.
Yeah, and again, an explosive offensive team. Goldsberry, the new quarterback, threw a pair of touchdown passes, which was obviously a good sign in his first year as a starter, taking over for Ben Hutchins. I mean, I think that, again, like we talked about in the preseason, you know, their defense has been a little up and down, you know, where they'll get the lead and give it back and things like that. But I mean, Matawan showed that they've improved as well. And the score is a little deceiving. Matawan scored on the last play of the game. After it was out of reach, but you know, they pushed Raritan
They're young
to the limit.
They're young. Yeah. They're a young team. They'll be okay.
Yeah.
How about Point Borough?
That division, I mean, we talk so much about that division, you know, Point Borough, Massaquoi, those kind of teams, but that's kind of that next maybe level to challenge those guys as far as that race going forward. But yeah, to me, Monmouth Regional was the score. I wasn't that they won. It was like, wow, they put up 38. You know, it's been a little while since they've really, you know, hung that on a solid team. So I think that was a really encouraging sign for them and, you know, their fan base.
And Red Bank looked good in the scrimmages. So it was a game that could have gone either way. And that division, the Independence, is going to be anybody can win at any time. But
now let's talk about the biggest game of the week as far as the rankings are concerned was Toms River North against Rumson Fairhaven on Saturday up at Rutgers. I mean, I watched this game. Toms River North's offense just looked incredible. And the scary part is they scored over 40. They put over 500 yards of offense on a team that no one gets 500 yards of offense on. And they did it despite having over 200 yards in penalties.
How do you yell?
How do you do that? How do you put up 500 yards and you had 200 yards in penalties? I mean, you're moving the ball at will. Michael Ford ran for almost 280 yards. He was unstoppable on the ground. I mean, they looked incredible, but you also walked away going, what's going to happen when they really put it all together and eliminate the penalties?
How is Coach Oz talking to his team the next day, telling them, we still haven't played our best ball yet? They just beat Washington Township and Rumson and had all these penalties. If they clean it up, you know, there's a nice path to where they want to get to.
And we all know about Michael Ford. He looked amazing. Their offensive line is rugged. It's funny. They have all these flashy skill players, so you think they're maybe a finesse type team. No, they are a brutal, like downhill, physical running team. They will smash you at the point of attack. And then if you miss a tackle, these guys are gone. And the other thing is, it's like whack-a-mole. It's like, okay, we kind of stopped this guy, but now like Pruitt got loose, or like, you know, then we stopped him, then they return a kickoff for a touchdown. You know, like
Josh Moore
trying to plug the leak over and over again, and it's just one different player after another. And there was another, you know, Ty Kazanowski, I thought, like looked amazing on both sides of the ball, as a ferocious blocker as a tight end.
Yes.
And then he's making plays all over the field, getting after the quarterback and, you know, making tackles in the middle of the field as a linebacker. I was really impressed with him as a two-way guy.
Needless to say, Rumson's a pretty good program too, right? I mean, yeah, Toms River North looks great. Rumson's going to be better than you want him to be this year, which showed they didn't give up. Venaccio to O'Toole Venaccio combination with Rigby. They got some receivers. Looks like they're going to be a throwing team a little bit this year.
Yeah, that was a big revelation to me, because you just think of Rumson, especially during this whole championship run. They're usually a team that establishes the run first. They're like physical running team, and then they hit you with play action, things like that. But they just came out slinging it. I mean, O'Toole had 28 pass attempts. You don't. I mean, I know some of that is because they're playing from behind, but you know, you don't see that too often with Rumson in recent years, where the quarterback is really the engine of everything as far as throwing the ball. but he looked good. I mean, there were some good deep balls to Venancio. Venancio is, 5'7", but he's out there making plays in midair, taking balls away from defenders, and he's a hard-nosed kid. He's a real weapon for them.
He's scrappy kid. He is. The Rumson receivers I always thought were very good. Didn't have the stats because they played to their defense. They ran the football and they caught passes when they had to. And now it looks like they may be leaned on a little bit more, which is fine. They'll be fine.
But I'll say, Tom's River North, who has a more impressive resume than them right now? They put 40 on a Rumson team that's in the state finals like every year, and they beat Washington Township, who went out and beat Eastern like 45-12 this week. So that's two really, really quality wins in 2 weeks. And I know RBC is the number one team, but the team with the best resume right now, because of who they've gotten to play so far, is Tom's River North. Yeah,
there's some disputing who's the number one team in the short. It's getting to that point, and we let those coaches pick, and it's getting real close. Those are two good teams with that. How about Manalapan? Manalapan made a statement separating people with a 2-0 record, beating Middletown North team. Coach Bush had him going, looking good in the scrimmages. Macchio, talking about special teams.
We talked about this last week. Manalapan special teams are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
They did it again this week. What, a 60-yard punt return for a touchdown?
Punt return this week, And
in a low-scoring game, it was 14-3. Again, clearly special teams and defense for them right now have looked amazing the first 2 weeks. We talked a lot about how Middletown North's offense should be a force this year to be reckoned with, and they held them without a touchdown. So, the Manalapan defense so far has shut down two teams that were expected to be two of the better passing attacks in the short conference, and they bottled them both up, Freehold Township and Middletown North, in the first 2 weeks.
They're playing great special teams, great defense. Their offense is doing enough to win the football games, and they have the athletes to do it, but they're playing to their strengths, and their strength is defense and special teams. So a lot of good football going ahead with Manalapan. Hey, do not worry about this team, Point Borough. That's all everybody was saying. Hey, trap game, all this, because they're playing Manasquan this week. They're playing a tough Neptune team. Well, they came right out of the gates, 42-0 against a Neptune team, which I was kind of surprised because I thought it was a kind of contrast in style. But boy, oh boy, Point Borough's got a lot of dudes that are ready to have even a better season than they did last year.
And not only that, if I'm not mistaken, it was 42-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
So, they just came right out and dominated. And, first game for Oliphant at quarterback, he looked amazing. Yeah, you could tell that's one of the most highly motivated. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion with them going forward, because they're a small school and they're not going to play, RBC and Tom's River North and some of these bigger schools because of their schedule. So then you're going to start saying, should they be ranked ahead of these other teams, these bigger school teams? But you know what? Before we get to any of that, you got, like you said from the beginning, they got to beat Manasquan, who's very good and is looking to, two old Thanksgiving rivals from the 70s, neighboring towns, they all know each other. Manasquan would love nothing more than derailing the Point Borough hype train, before it even gets out of the station.
Oh, we got a lot to talk about later. And who else we got to talk about is a super sophomore at Donovan Catholic, Michael Thomas III.
Oh my God! You posted that clip on Twitter of that catch.
He did it. I posted it. Don't give me the credit.
It was like Jamar Chase out there. That one-handed snatch, falling out of bounds, that was an NFL.
Who's teaching him how to catch like that in that program over there?
Right. That was just an incredible. That's a type of play where that'll just immediately make you sit up and take notice of a player. Man, I need to keep an eye on.
What's amazing, Scott, is he made a nice play like that. He had a great game, 200-something yards receiving, and all of a sudden Michigan offers him. Okay, so Penn State, Michigan. He's got 4 offers right now. He's a sophomore. He's only played in 2 games one game as a sophomore. 4 offers already. Sky's the limit with them. 41-7. Is that a comeback? Because Lacey was winning 7-0, and they scored 41 unanswered points. Is that a comeback, or it was just the flow of the game?
Technically, but obviously Donovan Catholic came into that game pretty heavily favored. But,
yeah.
They got some eye-opening players on that team, and again, they were right in the running last year. They had a strong argument to be the number 1 team in the short conference, which they've never done before in their program history. They'd love nothing more than to come back and secure that number one ranking this year, and then also the elusive state title, to bring that home. So they looked really sharp, especially with a lot of new skill guys, but clearly they just replaced great players with more great players.
Yeah, they're doing well. Talking about athletes with scholarships, he committed Tyler Douglas, the senior quarterback, going to Temple. What does he do? Sometimes when you commit, you might think, oh, whatever. He's focused on the season. 4 touchdowns.
You were doubting last week. You were doubting. You were on the home Dell.
Was that me?
Train.
Oh, come on.
Yeah,
no.
I was like, man, they got Tyler Douglas. They'll be fine. And he threw for 2, ran for 2.
All right, let's edit that out, guys. I don't know what he's talking about. But Tyler Douglas led him 28-14 to a home Dell team I thought had a chance to upset him. But that's huge for his program, to have a big season. Let's focus on our season and no more talk of scholarships. I'm committed. I'm going to lead you to a championship. And last week was a major step in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, and they have major. It's Ocean. The expectations are going to be really high. Yeah. They don't. Seasons like last year where they really struggled and they were really young, and that's very uncharacteristic of that program. So to them, they're trying to flush that and get back to the days where they're putting their name on a banner again. So they and they certainly have the weapons and the personnel to do it.
You said the word expectations all off season. That's all I heard from Marlboro. Expectations were so high.
Which is a rare word at Marlboro, right? I mean, for a lot of their history, the expectation was like, well, if we could get to 500, that would be amazing. This team just missed out on the playoffs last year. Yeah. And they're hungry for winning a division title, becoming a state playoff team, and being a threat when they get there. And they come right out and beat Brick 34-7 with a pair of 100-yard rushers in the game. I mean, they looked excellent right out of the gate. And I feel like, and think about it, that school, their basketball team just had an unprecedented success, winning the short conference tournament, winning state titles. So the football team certainly can look at that and take inspiration from that and say, why can't we do things like that?
Household names, maybe not now, but they will be by the end of the year. You got Ryan Mendez, that receiver, outside linebacker, AJ Schwartz, 2 seniors, the quarterbacks at DB, and Matt Cassidy, a junior. Safety, I call him the Ronnie Lott of the junior class.
Yeah, I mean, he had 128 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. He looked great. I mean, and against a program like Brick, a traditionally good program with a storied history. I was trying to think of the other day, has Marlboro even ever beaten Brick?
Yeah, last year.
They beat them last year. Okay, that's what I thought. So this is 2 years in a row of beating, a high quality program. I think this is one of these building block years where Marlboro was just at the cusp last year. They returned a lot of hungry players who thought, we're a playoff team last year, and they just missed out on it. I think their team is on a mission this year, and they have to be considered a division title contender too.
Scott, Friday night there was a game, a Group 5 school versus a Group 3 school, Barnegat, Freehold Township, and Freehold Township played Manalapan pretty close in the beginning and petered out. Statistically didn't have the air raid numbers that you would think. And I told people that when Corey Davis teams don't have those major stats, the next week he makes up for it. And he's one of the greatest guys at fixing things the next week, which showed in the game against a good Barnegat football team, 27-0, ran the football the first time a back ran for 100 yards since 2017. Chase Enlow, a sophomore, and he's a good one. So hearing Corey run the football is shocking, but he's got a sophomore now. Maybe he might turn to the old Oklahoma days with the running the football. I don't know, but that was a big win for Freehold Township.
Yeah, it was a good bounce back win, and especially defensively too, to come out and get a shutout after Manalapan had put 31 points on them the first game. So that was a big confidence booster defensively. But yeah, I think that. Corey's whole thing is just finding the weaknesses in the defense. So if that means they can't stop the run game because they love to run those draw plays out of the shotgun in that offense, and if everyone's running downfield in man coverage and turning their back, and then that running back is getting creases, he's going to have some success. And Corey spoke highly of him in the preseason. So, you knew he thought he could be a real weapon running the ball. But, yeah, that was a good bounce back win.
And Barnegat's going to be good in the Liberty division. Freehold Township showed they're not, don't count us out. We'll be in every game. How about Jackson Liberty coming out with a big celebration, 46-7 to Keensburg, opening kickoff for a touchdown, and they just rolled on a Keensburg team. I heard Keensburg had a couple guys out. It was a big mismatch during the game, but Jackson Liberty really, I mean, who knows? When a team is not used to winning like that, comes out on top like that, maybe they might live off of the fumes of the last week. But 46-7 was a big win for Coach Sharples.
Yeah, I mean, that part of it, I think, is just, that's a Group 1 team against a bigger school. But I think for Liberty, so much of it is just gaining confidence. They have players, they know that they can make plays, but until you go out and do it, you might struggle confidence wise. I mean, again, it's always good to start 1-0. I mean, I would think that the other thing is Jackson Liberty has way more players than them. More depth. Keensburg is a small team, but yeah, I mean, you got to. It was definitely a good night and a good weekend in Jackson. Both of the local teams won handily, and going forward, I think that things are looking good for both of them.
1.5 games left I have to talk about, and the half we'll talk about last was you had Westwood defeated Shore 34-0. Westwood is a Group 2 school playing Shore, who's Group 1, just lost what's his name? Jamie Mazzocco. They have a different identity. Don't count out Shore. Westwood's pretty good football team for what I hear. Very good up front. It just wasn't their day, at Rutgers, but they will definitely bounce back. I can guarantee you starting this week right there. But that was a game. And then the last game I want to talk about, which did not happen. And I was getting reports that the players went on the field and then came off because they were told that the game was forfeited or the season ended. I don't know what all the rumors are, or the rumors are out there. I still right now don't know if the end of the season or the end of the game. I didn't hear anybody say the season's ended, but the kids are saying that. I know they're very emotional right now, but I don't know what's going on in Asbury Park, but they did forfeit the game. And hopefully they can salvage a season, for those kids.
No, absolutely. And you saw some of the messages on social media where the players were saying, please don't let this be taken away from us. We worked all off season for this. We did training camp. We put in the grinding time to get prepared for this season. Please don't, pull the rug out from underneath us. Obviously, it's a tiny Group 1 program. They don't have a lot of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But from everything that sounds like so far, I mean, we haven't been able to report anything official on the record that, coaches or administrators have said yet. But from everything we've heard, it doesn't sound like the season is ending. Like it was just a situation that had to be resolved that couldn't be resolved until after this Wequahic game. So they had to take the forfeit and hopefully are getting things sorted out now so they can get back on track. And,
that's because it was week 0, Scott.
Talking about what's going on the field.
It's week 0. Nobody's in school yet. So it's hard to kind of fix things when nobody's all in one place at one time. Hopefully they do play a season this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the Shore Conference's most storied programs and, amazing history going back to the early 1900s. So, yeah, you definitely hope that Asbury can, get right back on track here.
Well, that was a lot to talk about, but, it was opening day games. Everybody had high expectations. Some people were upset because maybe they weren't as good as they thought they were. And then other people, wow, we could be potentially good. I love that about week 1. Big difference between 1-0 and 0-1.
Well, and I also love the overreactions one way or another. Someone has one bad game and it's, the season is lost. Forget it. Those guys are terrible. Next thing you know, they win 6 games in a row. And then another team that had a big win, they're going to have a huge season. Then they lose 4 in a row. So, that's the fun part about week 1 is the total overreactions one way or the other.
Or you go to some banquets and say a highlight of our game is when we won our first game. And they went 1-9. So you're right. Let's not overreact. The best something that's better than 1-0, I told the player, is 2-0.